What does signing your name in a hotel guest book have in common with an American astronaut planting a flag on the moon and a dog pissing on a fire hydrant? They are all ways of saying, I was here. In DCS, the equivalent of us pissing on a fire hydrant is setting a flag. Welcome to the DCS Mission Editor with Sedlo, an introduction to flags.
Good day, this is Sedlo. Today's lesson I will be talking about flags in the DCS Mission Editor. First off, I want to make a disclaimer. I am by no means an expert. There are better people than I that work in the DCS Mission Editor. They could design missions so much better than me. So take what I say with a grain of salt, but this is how I see it, and this sort of thinking has worked for me. So there you go. First of all, you can think of most triggers in DCS to be as a snapshot of what is happening at any given moment. That is to say, the trigger is measuring what is happening right at that particular instant. It's not in the past, not in the future, but at this very moment. This is an important concept to understand. Okay, I'm going to assume you are somewhat familiar with the core concepts of a trigger zone. Basically, a trigger zone is a shape that you lay down on a map. Then you can make a trigger that incorporates this area somehow. You could say that if a certain aircraft or a ground unit or a weapon goes into that zone, you can trigger an action. That's just one use of a trigger zone. There's many others, but that's what we're going to concentrate on today. Okay, here we have a trigger zone, and we've named it the cat_zone. Below it lies a representation of the Mission Editor trigger list, okay? Let's make some triggers. The first trigger, we are going to name it Cats in Zone. You can see that on the far left panel. It is important to name your triggers because once you have a list of about 15 or more, it's very hard to keep track of them. So name them all something individual, something common as well. So each type of trigger is named very similarly, but maybe with a number, okay? It can be important later as you get into more complex missions. Next, we will make a list of conditions. These are conditions that must happen in the mission at the exact time this trigger looks at it. The trigger will not fire unless all conditions are met. In this case, the conditions are that Cat 1, Cat 2, and Cat 3 are all within the cat zone at the same time. Now it's time to put the action in. This is what happens when all the conditions are met. So in this example, when Cat 1, Cat 2, and Cat 3 are in the cat zone together, they will all get fish. That's the action, so let's do it. Alright, the first cat has appeared. The trigger has not fired yet because not all cats are inside the zone. Here comes Meowser 2. We're close, but we're not quite there yet. We're still waiting for the third cat. Hey, look everyone, cat number 3 has joined the others. The trigger will now fire. Fish for everyone. Okay, you can see how this trigger fires when all 3 cats are currently in the zone. Most triggers in DCS reflect a snapshot of the present moment, but they cannot look into the past, nor can they look into the future. Now, what if we want to know Have all cats been in the zone? Not necessarily together, but has cat 1, cat 2, and cat 3 all each individually been inside this zone? The previous method of triggers will not work because that only sees what's happening in the present moment. Does it sound confusing? Well, let's go through this example. This trigger is the same trigger as the one we had in the previous example. But what we want to know is, have all cats been in the zone individually? Has cat 1, cat 2, and cat 3 at any point been inside this zone? Let's check it out. Cat 1 is here. Okay, the second cat has showed up. Things are looking okay. Wait, now the first cat has disappeared? Maybe it's gone for a walk? Maybe it's moved to a farm upstate? Ugh, it's hard to say either way. All we know is that it's gone. Oh look, the third cat has arrived, but we are missing the first cat. But each cat individually has been in the cat zone trigger zone. The trigger, though, will never fire because it needs all 3 cats in the zone at the same time. Oh no! How will we ever overcome this obstacle? Well, the answer is flags! Remember how it was said that a flag is like a dog pissing on a fire hydrant? It's a way of saying, I was here. We will make a set of triggers and put a flag down when each cat enters the zone. The first trigger is when cat 1 is in the cat zone. We'll set flag 1 to be on, just like this. Next trigger in the list is when cat 2 is in the cat zone. Flag 2 will be set to on. And the following trigger, as you have likely guessed by now, cat 3 in the cat zone. And when this happens, we will set flag 3 to, well, on as well. Let's add the final trigger. This trigger will fire when all 3 flags have been activated. You will note that it does not rely on all cats being in the zone. Rather, this trigger will look for if all 3 cat flags are active, because if they're all active, it means they've all been in the zone. In this final trigger, don't forget to put a flag on action and name it a unique name. It's a good idea to plant flags at almost every trigger action in your mission so that you might refer to them later. This could be important when you start getting into a complex mission and you may need to refer to it. I use an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of all this, but you could do it with a pencil and paper or notepad or whatever you need to do, but write down your triggers and the flags associated. It will certainly help you when you start making more complex stuff. Okay, the first cat has arrived and planted its flag. Flag 1 is now turned on. Okay, here comes cat 2. It also has planted a flag. Cat 3 has arrived and planted its flag as well, but cat 1 has gone away. But the flag remains visible. The piss on the fire hydrant is still smellable. This is good, in a way, because it means the trigger will fire and the action will happen. Okay, well, that is fine and good for cartoon cats with simple scenarios. What about more complex ones in the actual game? Will it work? Let's find out. Okay, just like that, we are back in the mission editor. I have placed 3 trigger zones here, Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3. I've also drawn a polygon over each of them so we can see it once we're in the game. I've got a TF51, and its call sign is Viper 1, and we are going to track it as it goes through all these zones. So let's go ahead and do that. I've got in the trigger list here, mission start trigger and a flag associated. Always a good habit to get into that. Let's make a new one. We'll call it Viper in Zone 1. And under the conditions, we are going to scroll all the way down to Unit Inside Zone, Viper 1-1, Zone 1. Perfect. Let's make some actions here. The first action I'm going to do is set command 246. It says nothing to do with flags. This is a command that will bump the mission back down to regular speed time, because when we're doing the demonstration, I'm going to accelerate time. Nothing to do with flags. Okay, so once this thing is in Zone 1, we are going to set our flag. And we find that under Flag On, and let's call it something Viper Zone 1. So when this thing flies into Viper Zone 1, or into the Zone 1, Viper Zone 1 flag will go on. What else do we want to do? Let's do a message to everybody. Message to all. Viper in Zone 1. Very original. Let's do a sound to everybody as well. So we'll go sound to all. Oh, here we are. Sound to all. Viper Zone 1. Alright, so we are going to do the same thing, but with Zone 2. And here's a handy shortcut. Instead of doing all of this out manually, go to the trigger, highlight it, and then go clone. It'll duplicate this trigger, and all we have to do is edit the values. So Viper in Zone 2, Viper inside zone, select Zone 2. We're going to keep that the same. We're going to edit this flag to say Viper Zone 2. We are going to edit the message to say Viper Zone 2. And we are going to pick a different sound file, which is here. And yeah, let's do that for number 3 as well. Easy peasy boopity doop. Not bad, eh? Alright, look at that. So, sound will play and a message will sound every time it goes through all of those. Now we could do even one more trigger here, and we can say completed the race. And we're going to use flags for this. And actually, let's use a little something, time since the flag. And this will go a certain time after the flag is done. And what was the flag name of our first one here? We'll go here, Control C copies, go back to here, Control V pastes. And we'll set this for 5 seconds after Zone 1. But wait, there's more. We'll clone this, and we'll say Zone 2, and clone this, and say Zone 3. So basically this trigger won't fire until 5 seconds after it's entered this zone, and 5 seconds after it's entered this zone, and 5 seconds after it's entered this zone. So since this will be the last zone to happen, it'll fire 5 seconds after this one. Alright, and at this time we will say, message to all, congrats, you've gone through all the zones. Alright, that's looking pretty good to me. Do you want to test it out? Let's go ahead and do that. Save, fly. And we'll go right to the F10 map here. There's our plane. Let's accelerate time. Viper 1 is in Zone 1. There we go. The time went back to 1 times. We have the message and we had the audio. Let's do it some more. Accelerate time. Viper 1 has passed through Zone 2. Alright, now let's accelerate time. Viper 1 has passed through Zone 3. And now the next trigger, Viper has passed through all zones. See how that worked? That was great. So that shows you that the Viper aircraft has passed through all 3 zones. Okay, here's the thing. What if you want it to do it in a certain order? Say you want it to go through the yellow one, the green one, and then the red one. How would you enforce that? Let's take a look. Okay, so you know how we have made flags for past events and then based our current triggers off of that. We can also limit the conditions. And what I mean by that is, say we want this aircraft to go through Zone 1, then 3, then 2, and we want to enforce that. It's pretty easy. What we can do is, for the trigger when it's entering Zone 2, we can say we want flag to be false. And the flag we want to be false is Viper Zone 3. This means if this aircraft flies through this zone and then flies through this zone, Viper Zone 3 flag will be triggered. So then if it flies through this zone, this trigger will not trigger because Viper Zone 3 flag is true. And we have it set, this will only fire if it's false. Does that make any sense? Let's give it a shot here. I'm going to make it so this aircraft flies through Zone 1 like it did before. It's going to go through Zone 3 next. Now Zone 3 trigger will fire and you'll have you've flown through Zone 3. But this aircraft, once it goes through Zone 2, nothing will happen. Watch this. Alright, into the F10 map. We'll accelerate time. Viper 1 is in Zone 1. You betcha it is. We'll accelerate time again. Now this one will fire. Viper 1 has passed through Zone 3. It will not fire when it goes through here because this flag down here is true. Look at that. See how that worked? You can set in a condition for a flag to be false, and that can help you shape your mission. If this happens and the player does this, the thing that was supposed to happen won't. And that sounds like a bunch of crazy words, but if you follow this video and watch it one more time, you'll see. Now, we've talked about flags in terms of trigger zones only, and that's just because it's an easy example to show. But you can use flags for just about anything, and with flags, using them as true or false in your conditions, you can make unlimited amounts of cool and complex scenarios. Okay, I hope this has given you an idea of what flags are and how to use them. I know when I first started out in DCS, my first missions were fairly simple, and I kind of heard about flags, but I didn't really understand what they were, and I was just like, I don't need them. But if you want to make scenarios that are just a little more complex than just plain vanilla, you're going to need to use flags, and you should need to learn to embrace them because it just opens up so many possibilities. Okay, I am rambling again. I hope that you found this video interesting and informative. Like, subscribe, whatever you want to do. I don't care, but I just hope that you have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.